All right, welcome back to the RunThrough Trails Podcast. We're joined today by the wonderful Holly Stables. Welcome, Holly.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Excellent. Lovely to have you. And also by our regular co-host, Lewis Moses of New Levels Coaching. Lewis, how are you today, mate?
Good, James. Thank you. Yes, I'm staying out of the wind, but we've had lovely sunshine recently. Been making the most of the weather out on the trails. So yes, all good. And I'm really looking forward to today's episode after Holly has been mega news recently. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into this one.
Yeah, totally. Well, we've just been having a little chat before we pushed record about some of your recent antics, Holly. But maybe for our listeners, what we normally would do is start out with just a little bit of history about yourself. So a little bit about kind of childhood, sport history, and how you got into the sport of running.
Okay. I feel like everyone must have, well, I say that as if people know me, but I guess some people don't know who the hell I am. But running wise, I didn't run as a kid. I didn't actually run at school really, apart from the stuff that we were made to do. And so my background was really, actually, I was really into horses. I loved riding and actually my passion was in horse racing, and I wanted to go and work in the racing yards, which I did for a while, but that's a whole other subject. And then I didn't start running until, I went to university in London, and because I was in London, I watched London Marathon, and a friend of mine was doing it one year, and I decided after watching it, I guess it's weird, isn't it? Like a lot of people would watch it and go, yeah, brilliant, not for me, thanks. But I watched it and said, I'm going to do it next year, because it just looks like I can do it. There's loads of different people doing it. You see the top people and the people running in elephant costumes and things. So I did it the next year for charity, and I wore all the inappropriate clothes. I wore cotton t-shirt, Bath rugby shorts, Bath rugby socks. It rained, everything chafed. But for some reason, I decided that I'd give it a go the next year. And then, so that's when I sort of started. So that was 1997.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I did sort of fall in love with it, but life got in the way. I was working in sport. I went on to do like personal training, and then I went on to management. So I was working in gyms and stuff like that. So I was involved in sport, but I was sort of running in the gym, like on the treadmill and things like that. And it wasn't until I actually moved back home and I got a job in Bath that I sort of started running a little bit more, because I joined Bath AC, the running club, and I ran like just from training, just myself, and that was just running. I didn't do any sessions or anything. I ran 3:06, and then I remember people at the Bath. I never went and trained at Bath AC, and then they put something up on there. We used to have a newsletter called the Bath Plug, and they put quite good, isn't it? Now I think about it,
yeah, very good.
Picture of me in it, going, "Who is this skull?" Because I ran 3:06 in London, and then from there, someone said to me, maybe you should start doing some proper training. So I downloaded a Runner's World. Back in the day, you could get a Runner's World training plan, because I thought, well, let's see if I can run under 3 hours, because that seems like pretty cool. So I followed the training plan, and I went to Berlin, and I ran 2:50. But it's 2:57, but my my gun time was 2:59, because I actually was in the porta toilets as the gun went off. That's how inexperienced I was. So I did 2:57 anyway, and I thought, well, that's it, it's amazing. And then someone said, maybe you should get a coach. And then that's when I enlisted the help of a coach at Bath. And that was in the January. And then by April, I ran London again, and I ran 2:48. That was from just doing some proper training. So from there, that's when I started. I'd say that's when I started properly training. So that was 2004.
Wow.
Yeah. So
nice.
That's what I sort of thought. If I do speed work, which I'd never done before, like I'd not been on track, then let's see what happens. And then that's where it sort of grew.
Amazing. I'm really intrigued, and it's a fascinating story. Actually, you're the second person we've had on, Holly, who was into horses more when they were younger. Maybe it's a trend that...
I was going to say that.
From that, yeah. Chelsea was on here too. Yeah, that's interesting. But the reason I'm looking forward to this conversation is because we probably, in some sense, all three of us, but particularly yourself, Holly, and I, we follow a very similar path. And what I mean by that is we started maybe as kind of outlanders track and road runners, eventually found our way into the trail world, seem to be going longer. I'm certainly coaching people to longer distances now. Found a love of adventure and outdoor living and sport, and probably more of a lifestyle switch than anything. And I've kind of been fascinated by that journey. But I remember you as a marathon runner because I used to train with the likes of Lee Merrion, who was in my group, who shared teams with you back at Europeans and those sort of things. So growing up, as I was kind of evolving in the sport myself and on my own journey, I saw you as a marathon runner. And then I've slowly started to look back at how you progressed those longer distances and saw all of your achievements in that world. But this is very new to me. So like your UTMB results, I wasn't really in the trail world then. I was kind of coming into it over the last 2 or 3 years. But then when I saw the Speed Project recently, I was like, God, that's Holly. And then realised that you had a different name as well. So I didn't tie two together.
That's the thing, actually. I mean, I have been around a bit. I mean, I think that's the thing that I've tried to make clear more so after TSP, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, that I have, and it's only been actually since that I've been asked some questions from other people that I've spoken to about how long I've been running or been in the sport. And actually, it hasn't been until I've looked back and looked at, like, calculated it all as to actually how long I have been really lucky that I've been in the sport this long, and I've progressed and tried to still be, you know, competitive, but at different distances, and sort of staying it. Because I've got lots of friends that I've competed with who, like at the Europeans and Commonwealth Games and that, who have just, you know, they sort of vanished, or they've got other things, they've had families and they're not, or they're coaching, or they're just not into that anymore. And I guess it's just been always there, and I've just continued. And I have been really lucky to do that. I definitely think, you know, that's been, I've been so lucky. And, you know, I look back and just saying about that, I knew it was 2004 because I looked the other day, the fact that I looked up in 2004, I ran 2:57 or whatever it was, 2:59. And since then, every marathon I've done, with the exception of 2 where I was a pacer, I've ran every marathon under 3 hours. And that's 32 road marathons.
Wow.
And I'm like, so it's like, my God, I've got to keep doing that. That end. And then obviously the ultras I've done. And, you know, I did my first 100 on my 40th birthday. And, you know, and then I did UTMB and things like that. And so I'm doing even longer stuff, which I never, ever thought I would do. And it's not something that I thought about doing when I was young. And, you know, and that's what I'm trying to talk to people about now, is like, you know, doing these ridiculous things when you're really young, it's great, but it's quite early to do it. I think you need to build up to that. And, you know, there's lots of experience and lots of things that have happened behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, well, the depth of your kind of results and running history is ridiculous. So some stuff will have to kind of, I guess, move through somewhat quickly. Yeah, but I do want to kind of spin back a little bit. So you mentioned, like, running the first marathon, getting started as a bit of a fun runner, late 90s. Running sub 3 hours in early 2000s, and you just touched on Europeans and the Commonwealth Games, so that was both 2010, right? 2010,
which is ages ago now. It doesn't seem that ages ago because it's so, like, it was such a amazing year, 2010, and again, like, something I didn't expect to happen. It wasn't ever sort of in my mind that I would get to that point. So yeah, I mean...
Well, how did you get to that point? That was going to be the question. So going from 2004 and running your first kind of proper marathon, as you put it, what was that next 6 years like to then become kind of world-class and compete on the world stage?
Yeah, I guess, it's 6 years, which is actually what I was always told my coach. It takes sort of 6 years to get to that point. That's why I'm trying to say to people now, you know, that start running in lockdown, you know, I'm going to suddenly do all this stuff really quickly. But actually, it takes 6 to 8 years, really, to get to that point if you're going to do it properly. So... it just was an accumulation of years of training. Every marathon I did, I would obviously target spring marathons and autumn or one, which is very different to ultra running now, where people are doing like hundreds every few months, which is, you know, totally different to road running marathons. I was like knocking off 2 minutes at a time, unless it was like a marathon which was in a particularly hot country, or if it was a team event or something. I was knocking off sort of 2 minutes at a time, which was significant, but it wasn't huge. But it was, I think, the right amount every time, because I was learning stuff, you know, like, because I hadn't ran as a junior, I went straight into doing my first race was like a marathon. I hadn't done the traditional way of getting to the Europeans by being good at 5,000, 10,000, 10K. I hadn't done that. And in fact, they were really slow. And that's what I went back to try and work on. Which we spent a lot of time trying to work on. And that did work a bit, but I think it was very clear early on that I was very much a diesel engine. And I did get my 5,000 5K and my 10K time down and my half marathon time quite significantly, to the point where we'll get onto that, where I should have really from those times been running around 2:34, but that didn't happen for some reason or another. Other topic. But so when I went to London in 2010, that was the trials for the European Championships.
Okay.
And that year they were taking, they always used to take to the European teams. And you had to have you had to get the qualifying time, and then you also had to place in the top 3 or top 6 British women to be selected. And even then, like it is a bit now, you still may not have been selected. They may have decided they weren't going to take a whole team. So you really sort of in their hands. So I went to London. I already had the qualifying time, which was under 2:38. And then it was up to me to sort of race the other girls. So it was a great race because literally we were all together for quite a long time, and everyone was like checking each other out, seeing who's going to go. Ellen went first, Helen Decker at the time, who's Davies. And so that race turned out, I came in 6th woman in 2:37 time. It's all of that, but I didn't know if I was going to get selected. But I got the call on the train home, so that was just like over the moon. But the thing with it that year is it meant that I was gonna have to do London, then reasonably quick turnaround, be ready for Barcelona. And
that was going to be the next question. How did they sit relative to each other? When was Barcelona?
Like April, and Barcelona was July.
Yeah, it's quite quick turnaround.
Quite quick. And obviously Barcelona was July, red hot. And the race started at like 11 a.m.
No. Why?
It was brutal. I hate using that word, but it was brutal. It was like ice fests at the start. I think it got up to about 30 degrees in the race. A couple of the lads, like Andy Jones, was on a drip afterwards, so we always ribbed him about that because none of us girls were on a drip. All the boys were. But from that race, it was an amazing race, and the whole opportunity, being your first proper sort of championships where you're with other athletes, that was just like massive for me and really eye-opening, and I learned so much from it. And then from there, it was the top three would get selected for the Commonwealth Games, and I was third counter. So to be a third counter as well for the actual team. So we also won a team bronze at the time, which upgraded to silver. That was amazing to stand on the podium and get a medal. Like more than something I never ever expected, and will always be one of my highlights of my running career. And then obviously I got selected for Commonwealth Games, which again meant another turnaround, which was October. So it was 3 marathons in a year, like 3 big marathons.
Wow. Yeah.
And I'll be honest, Commonwealth Games was really tough and a bit of an anticlimax. Being selected to go to Commonwealth Games is amazing, and again, a highlight of my career, but it was really tough. The conditions we were in Delhi, the conditions were really grim.
Wow. Yeah.
Very hot, very humid. And also my first experience of doing like a multi-sport games. So I was with people, like swimmers, cyclists, everything, and we stayed in the village. So that was a different experience, but I'll be honest, for it.
How did that change things then? Because you kind of lit up when you talked about Barcelona, and then obviously Commonwealth Games sounds like it was a different experience. With the multi-sport stuff and the format of that and the accommodation and all the setup, was it just the fact you're in India, so obviously weather, humidity, food, travel was a bigger factor than Barcelona, but we had to go for a holding camp before as well, which was in Doha. And I don't know if you've been to Doha. It's basically living in an oven. And so it's not conducive to marathon runners. It was all right for like the sprinters, but even the sprinters, it was pretty grim. So we were in Doha for a couple of weeks, basically. Oh, and also you have to be quite respectful. Obviously, we couldn't go and run out in crop tops or anything. Yeah, right. We trained at the Aspire Centre, so we did a lot of treadmill work or work in the night, but it was still very hot. And then you'd spend the rest of the time in a hotel in air conditioning, eating lentils. It's just disastrous. And you could have had plain rice. Rice.
I could have done, but that was really boring as well. But when we got to the race, it was a bit, I think we were all just like, and our event was the very last event. So we were taken into the village sort of as everyone else had finished. And I have no idea where this happened, but they put us marathon runners in, because you were put in like apartments, and we were put in with the girl sprinters, which is like a match from hell. So they'd finished, and they're like party girls. And then the endurance runners, who were all a bit boring, we don't go out, we're not drinking, we're put in the same apartment as them, and we clashed big time. And it was just, and we did the race. And then, I'm not joking, we literally were taken back to our apartments. We had a time for a very quick shower, and then we got taken to the closing ceremony, where you stand in a stadium for hours. You've just done a marathon, and then we went from the stadium straight to the airport and we're put on a plane. I mean,
wow. Yeah, you're not selling this. This sounds brutal.
No, I agree. It does. But you know what? I want to unpick quite a bit here, Holly, because I'm having flashbacks in my mind, and the reason I'm having flashbacks is because at the time, really good friends with Tomo, who was out in Delhi. John Beattie as well, who was in the 10K that year. Obviously, remember the marathon team as well, and people going out.
Almost taken out by a monkey.
Yes. Oh God. And but I just remember these images coming back from the village, and I was like, oh my God, this is horrific. Absolutely horrific.
So if anyone remembers this games, this was the games where there was heightened security because there'd been lots of sort of security threats. So the marathon course was on lockdown. So it was like doing a lockdown, like a COVID marathon. So no one was allowed on the course apart from security men and monkeys. There was a lot of monkeys on the course. And then the village was half finished. So it was all on the news. I don't know if you remember where. So we had swimming pools outside each of our apartments, and the swimming pools had like no tiles around the outside. So you had like cables, electric cables sticking out, and just everything about it was just like I feel bad saying about it, but it just wasn't brilliant.
I remember it being like that was the kind of the general consensus within the team. But another thing I wanted to touch on was that thing you mentioned about sprinters, because when I went to Turkey, Istanbul, I remember people could put down who they wanted to room with, and I got roomed with a guy called Steve Lewis, who's a pole vaulter. And I remember saying to Steve, I was like, Steve, why did you put my name down? He said, because you're not a sprinter and you're not a field eventer. He said, you endurance runners, you behave yourselves.
100%. It was, it was like we were just chalk and cheese being put in the same apartment. It's just madness.
But then, this sort of stuff, does it, all this experience of like, you talked about these harsher experiences, living like you had to, and then going out and performing, in some ways, has it set you up for the trail life? And because you have to learn how to deal with extreme circumstances, not always the best nutrition, not always the best preparation, sleep deprivation, all those things. Like being able to deal with that and still going out and perform, would you say that that's helped you to just continue to love what you do and appreciate all these little small things despite all these challenges that go on?
That's a really good question, and something no one's ever asked me. And my answer straight away to that is actually no. Because I don't think it crosses over at all. I think it's so different. I found it so different going from just also the sort of people that you're hanging around with. So road runners at that level, like you are so consumed with your training. It's all about split times. It's all about paces. It's all about lactate pro machines. Then, I love that it's all a big thing now. But at the time we were doing lactate pro, we were doing creatine, we were doing all sorts of stuff. It's all about that. It's all about every second counts, every minute counts. Whereas going from that to ultras, I guess that's why I fell in love with it. There really wasn't anything like that. There is a bit more, obviously, now in the high-end ultras, definitely, and I think that's a good thing. But generally, when I moved over to ultras, it was very much like everyone's having a picnic out, and it's, you're doing a long run, and you're there's no, you're doing like a 15-minute mile potentially. Back then it was like, it's all about, how fast you could be. Whereas going to ultras, it was very, very different. In terms of the food and stuff, I still haven't got that nailed, if I'm honest. But that didn't prepare me. When I think back about how I was about the road running and the races and stuff, I feel actually now that I was far too over the top. I'm so relaxed now about stuff like that.
Interesting.
It was like, if I don't eat this at this particular time, or I don't have this particular food, everything is going to go wrong. Whereas now I'm just like, right, quickly, let's get some food in and get out the door, or stop mid-run and have a pasty. And
that's Lewis. Yeah, that's Lewis and his wife Gemma. Gemma is like, I need this amount of rice at this time, and blah 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 blah. And Lewis is like, I might have a curry tonight.
Yeah. Yeah. Before it'd be like, I have to have this certain food the night before, or I'll turn into a pumpkin. And like now I'm just like, yeah, whatever, you know, and I think that makes you, I mean, I'm still like that, because bearing in mind, so when I went to doing ultras, and my first sort of ultra was Comrades, because I felt like, well, if I'm going to do ultras, I'm a road runner. So Comrades,
makes sense.
the first one I heard. So even then I was, I was being more cautious about, thinking about my eating and stuff like that. But, I think a lot of it, you have to, especially with the ultra sort of stuff, you just got to learn on the fly. You just got to go with it.
It's a culture change, isn't it? It's a complete and a mindset shift, 100%. And I think that's what attracts people. I think that's what attracted us. It's different people. It's different mindsets. Completely different. It's like a different sport.
Yeah, I think the people, sorry, road runners, but I think the people are just so much more accepting, more open. They'll talk more about what they're actually doing. I find in road running it was quite guarded, and I hate to say it, could be slightly backstabbing or, that sort of thing. Whereas this is much more, I think people support each other more and big each other up a bit, especially the women. Now, I think this last couple of years, the women especially are really supporting each other. Whereas back in the day on the road, it was a bit more cutthroat. No, it may have afterwards you might shake hands, beforehand, maybe not. I think that, so what was I lost my train of thought when I was saying about Comrades. When I was doing all of that, I was still racing marathons, and I'm still been doing marathons, obviously, up until now. And I was going out and doing marathons in training for Comrades, and then whatever ultras I did after that. But I was still running. This was the interesting thing. I was being way more relaxed about the way I approached marathons, and the way I, so I didn't matter if I slept on someone's sofa the night before and ate a pizza, whereas normally I'd have had something completely different. I'd had to learn at night. I was still doing marathons. I'm still knocking out like low 240s, like 241. And I was like, yeah, I'm not that much slower. I mean, I am slower. I mean, there is a big difference between, and 237, 236. But I realised that maybe I had made a bit of a big old deal about it, when I was running those sort of
definitely
a little bit anal.
Yeah. Even we'll come on to the coaching stuff as well at some point, because obviously got two coaches on the call, so we've got to touch on it. But there's a million different ways to do it. You can focus on tons of 5K VO2 max stuff, like increase that threshold and then build in the specific long runs and blah, blah, blah. Or you could do just loads of steady tempo work and probably run pretty much the same time for a marathon, which is something me and Lewis have realised recently off the back of some of my training and some stuff that Gemma's been doing as well. There's so many different ways to do it. And I think the options for training methods, nutrition, racing strategies, everything, the longer the race goes and the more factors that are involved with weather and terrain and the length of time that you're out there, even more so for multi-day stuff, factoring in sleep and whether it's supported or not and all this stuff, just opens up way more options and different ways to do things. And I think it's cool because you see mountain people who come at it from like a mountaineering, skiing, climbing, adventure sport background and get into ultra running that way. And then you have people like yourself who are world-class elite road runners who make their way over into ultra-distance trail running and kind of meet in between. And you got people in split shorts and singlets, and then you got people in like hiking kit running the same race, just doing it a completely different way. But my next question, Holly, was going to be, because you kept using the word ultra, and obviously like we'll finish talking about the Speed Project, which is, I guess you'd call it multi-terrain, because you can kind of do whatever you want to do. But you touched on Comrades there as your first ultra-distance race. So was it extending the distance that was appealing, or was it getting out into the mountains, onto the trails that was appealing, or a combination of both? That was going to be kind of my next question. Comrades is a super interesting race. It's one that I would definitely want to do at some point in my life. It looks absolutely incredible. But I also want to know if you did the uphill or downhill year, and whether you do the same. Obviously, everyone says the down's worse, right? That's just pure quad annihilation.
Well, it's worse, I think, post-run, because it's still, the up and the down is still very like this.
Okay.
So the year I did it as well also happened to be roasting hot. I seem to pick races that have freak weather conditions. It was very, very hot. And the reason why I did it, like I said, was like everyone just told me, well, you should do Comrades. And to be honest, that's the only ultra I'd ever heard of at that point. So, and I was lucky to do it for Nedbank. It was like there's teams that you can be invited to be a part of, and they just look after you when you're there. So I went to I went over there with them. so bearing in mind, I think the furthest I'd ran, I did a like a local sort of trail ultra thing, which was 40 miles or just under 40 miles. So that's the furthest I'd ever ran before.
Okay.
It was just an extension of, the reason why I did it was, I didn't like trail running. I'd never done trail running. Well, there wasn't such a thing as trail running when I did it. It was cross country or fell running. So I'd done cross country, but didn't really like it that much. And I really never ran off road at home because it would make me slower. So then why would I do it? So I only ever ran on the towpath or the road. So for me, the natural thing was to do Comrades. And and I did it purely because of that, not because of that specific distance. In 40 miles, I'd have done it. It's just that it was 89 kilometers. I really just extended my marathon training, really. I carried on marathon training. I had all my heart rate data because I always ran to heart rate.
Okay.
And so I knew really what I could run 40 miles at with that heart rate. And so I just basically did that until I got to the last sort of 5 miles, which happens to have Polly Shorts in, which is the hideous hill.
Okay.
Just do what you can, run as hard as you can. So I literally, and I'd been speaking to like Steve Way, a good mate of mine. And it was like, just run to heart rate, see what you can do, keep on getting the nutrition in and see what happens. So that's basically what I did. And whatever that time was at the end, that's what, from my heart rate, that's what I got. And I got 7th place.
And how were the legs after that? Was it much, much worse than post-marathon? Yeah.
And the other thing is that I had to wait an awful long time because I was so dehydrated in doping control. So I had to just stand around waiting and drinking loads of liquids to try and get something out of me. And, and that took hours.
Yeah, so you couldn't refuel. And
that didn't help. Exactly. I couldn't really look after myself. And then the other thing, actually, I was talking about this the day after, because obviously after the Speed Project, I had really, and now when I look back on it, it's actually quite bad. I was very swollen after the race, like all over. So I wonder if I had some sort of weird, I'd had too much water, maybe from...
Yeah, like water retention.
Yeah. So I was, like to the point where I put weight on, so I couldn't put my trousers on and stuff like that. I was swollen all over. Yeah, it's really weird. And then it went down. But, probably now people would be like, oh shit, get to hospital or something. But then it was just, so what year was that? Was it? Yeah, I think it's 2013. So that was my first sort of, and I thought that was a long way, it was just over 50 miles. Little did I know what I'd be doing several years ago.
I was going to say, now it seems like short way. Interesting, isn't it, how it turns out? Yeah.
But it was cool. I mean, honestly, Comrades is one of the most insane races. I mean,
it looks so amazing.
With the incredible start. And then the other thing which I found, which I'd never had as well from going road running in the UK, is the support I had from the African men. So the African men on the course want you to be faster and they want to push you on. And they literally would surround me and talk to me and like push me on. It was amazing. I'd never had that before.
Wow.
Maybe I think I've seen that more now in ultras now, but in that, it was something that I was always used to being quite competitive with men or women or whatever, whereas they were just really helpful at wanting you to, like, helping you, getting you drinks, looking after you. It was amazing.
I think you're right. I think that's what you do see in ultras. It's, UTMB just gone 2024. I remember being on the course at Ballacine and seeing Courtney Dauwalter on course, like cheering Katie Scheid on. And that's just unheard of in the marathon domain. I agree with you fully. You mentioned Steve Way there. I'm not going to go into Steve's story, but if you are listening to the podcast, that's a great story, Steve Way, at the Commonwealth Games. And just a really inspirational story. And his first one, like when he did make it, the newspapers got hold of it and kind of showed you Steve's background and stuff and went into ultras as well. So I'm glad you mentioned his name. He's a really good character.
I'm sure he isn't, but we love you. Yeah, he's brilliant.
Yeah. So listen, go and see, or go and Google Steve Way's story for those of you tuning in. But this is about Holly. Oh, I'm intrigued to know, Holly, is Comrades and things like UTMB, although they're both classified as ultras, they're very different, like very different. So what then gave you the bug, or how did you get into that world? Because it is a very different world, stepping into the mountains and, doing a lap of Mont Blanc. So when did that happen for you and why did it happen?
So I honestly don't know. I think it's probably because of the people I was mixing with after doing Comrades and things like that, and the people I met. I'd also spent a lot of time in Nepal. I still go to Nepal a lot to race over there and just do my own things. Like I've ran Annapurna on my own with a pack and 3 passes and stuff because I just love it there. And I met people. I actually met a lot of people through that. They're the people that actually told me about Comrades, the people I met in Nepal. But from there, it was like, oh, have you heard of UTMB? And I'd heard of it because obviously I'd got to know Lizzie Hawker, who's another legend. You should look her up, in Nepal. And obviously I knew that she'd won the UTMB. And we talked about it. So I thought, well, UTMB is far too far from me and far too technical. I couldn't do technical stuff. I'd never done it. So I thought I'd try CCC because that was before OCC started. Yeah. So I did CCC, I think, again, you're going to test me with the date. I think it was 2016, my first year. It was very wet, I think, that year. It was snowing. But I did that, and that was, a bit of a baptism of fire because like 100K in the mountains is hard.
Yeah, how did you train? Did you get out there? Did you see the course? Did you kind of know what to expect, or was it a bit of a shock?
This is how I was always a bit bad. I was a bit like, I'm going to rely on my speed and not really do much running.
Yeah, okay. How did that go?
I did some, do you know, it's just so like, I probably did some trail races at home, but I didn't go out to, I didn't go out and train on the course. Now I'm just thinking, actually, I can't remember when I did it, but the other big race I did was Ultravasan, which was the first trail race of the Vasaloppet, which is the longest cross-country skiing race in the world, I think, in Sweden. Okay. So I got invited out to do that. So I got invited to do the first one of that. Don't know if that was before or not, but that was like a trail race, but it's not technical. It's like through forests.
It's dead flat, isn't it? I was literally talking to someone the other day. Yeah, it's like a 90K with like 500 meters of elevation or something.
Yeah. You're running through a lot of like bogs though, like ice bogs, and they've got like the boarding that you run on, which is quite hard to do. And I can't remember if it was that I did that before or after, but I did that, and that went really well. I think I ran about 7 hours, and that was really quick.
You won that one. Let's just throw that.
I won that, yeah. I won that. And Jonas Bood, whose race it was, he won it as well. And Steve came out to do that's it, but I think he came third. So then I think maybe it was from there, and then I did CCC, and that was, I think I came 7th there for CCC. Maybe it was 8th. I can't remember. It was top 10 anyway. And then, but I had no idea if that was good or not, because I'd always, in marathons, it was different. And then from there, I did it the next year again, because I thought maybe I could do it better. And I think I ran 2 hours quicker the next year. Wow. Okay. So I must have done some more training. Sorry, I can't even remember any of this, what I did. But then it was 2018 that I did UTMB. I must have plucked up the courage to say I'm going to do UTMB because it's the logical next thing to do. And unfortunately, I fractured my foot going into that. But I was staying out. I'd booked a hut in Trion, which is right on the course. They go through Trion where the pink house is. And I was there for a month. And it was like, it's touch and go whether I was going to do it. And I spent the whole time basically hiking with the dog or on a turbo trainer looking up at the mountain. So I went and I did UTMB, and I'd only probably been running for about 2 weeks. Insane, I know. I did UTMB, and it was one of the worst experiences. It wasn't even my foot that was the issue. My foot was fine. Something happened to my stomach. I mean, there's quite a few podcasts on it, but basically from 30K in, which is what?
It was like Lazusha or something. Yeah. Very early.
I was shitting and being sick the whole way.
Oh.
And I was adamant I was going to finish. I thought I was last at one point, and that's how off my head I was. And in fact, at Champs Lac, they had to give me anti-nausea tablets, and they wrapped me in a blanket, and I had 2 hours kip there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fair play for getting it done.
I know. And I came out of that, and I was just like, okay, so I'm just going to have to take every bit at a time. And I did that. And I actually remarkably came 18th.
Wow, that's insane. I mean, I feel like 18th woman isn't having a 2 hour sleep nowadays at UTMB. No, yeah. The depth is just a different thing, isn't it now?
Yeah. I mean, it took me 30 hours.
Right, okay. That's interesting, yeah.
It's interesting. But I did it. But from that race, because I finished it, I'll be honest, that was a turning point for me. It was a turning point for me, first of all, to change what I was doing in terms of my training and looking after myself, because I'd been plagued with stress fractures all my running career. And that was the last fracture I had. And that's when I decided I have to change things. So there was a big turning point. And also I just mentally, I felt that if I'd got through that, I got myself through it, then nothing will ever be that hard. Obviously, little did I know that harder. But that honestly was my hardest race previously to TSP.
Interesting. And I think there's something in that, because I always say to people I coach, like, sometimes your best, in inverted commas, your best performances aren't the fastest. Sometimes you find out a lot more about yourself when you have to go deep. It's a great example.
Yeah.
But what you're describing there, Holly, as a coach is my dream scenario, because I think personally, the reason the ultra trail world is progressing is because there's people like yourself who go into it maybe a bit unknown, and actually there's so much more information out there now that coaches are getting hold of people like yourself who have the ability, have the talent, and they're saying, well, actually there's a lot of things you need to consider that maybe you weren't in the past. And you would have been like my coaching dream back in the day, because I'd have been like looking at it going, no, you can't just think like that. You can't do that. Yeah.
I wasn't doing any specific sort of technical training.
Wow.
I think I got my poles out for the first time there. But I think you also have to think about, I always say to a lot of people I coach, like, you just need to be as fast as you can as well. Be as fast as you can, and then we specify a bit. But also, like, being able to eat and being fast, that'll do you well. And that was my issue, and still is my issue. Is the eating thing is an issue. But yeah, I've got people I coach who that is their USP. They can just eat a roast dinner every hour and be fine. They may not be the fastest person, but they'll probably be beating people who are faster who can't eat.
Absolutely, yeah, and you are right. We James and I say a lot. First step is being as fit as you possibly can on the start line. That's step one. Durability and conditioning and all those sort of things also play a part. But nutrition is huge, and it's a skill. And some people are born with it. Some people can train it. Some people struggle with it. And I'm intrigued to find out how you managed it with the Speed Project, which we'll go on to. Before we do, just one final bit from kind of that UTMB series, because you did do CCC top 10, which, for people listening, that's a podium, by the way, at UTMB to get in top 10, which is amazing.
It was I got top 10.
There you go.
And then I think it was 18th, and then goblins, and then I did TDS, which I loved, and I think I was 18th there as well, and that was a great race. So yeah, I've ticked them all off. I've just got to do OCC. Yeah,
that was my final question. Was we can see from your profile that you've kind of been through the lot, but the OCC is relatively a new event when it comes to UTMB. Are there plans to drop back down the distances to go and tick that one off?
I would love to, for me, but the issue is getting in now, because I was supposed to be going to UTS again this year, but I've double booked myself. I forgot it was my father-in-law's 70th birthday, so I can't do that now, which is a real shame. And I've only got one stone. So I tried to get into OCC last year and didn't get in. So yeah, it's quite hard. And I think I'm like right on the edge with my ITRA, whatever they're called, in my points. I think I'm like 640 or something. So I think I'm just on the verge of not getting a entry or whatever it is. I'll be honest, I don't really understand it all.
We've talked about it too much on this podcast, so we can't go back into the points and stones system. But it's not the simplest.
I would like to do it, but it's a shame that I didn't do it further back in the day when I probably was a bit faster, because the times now are rapid and the people doing it, and it's exciting. I love it.
Well, my advice would be pick 100k somewhere in the world where you feel like you could make that top 3.
Yeah.
And get your 100k qualification and then drop down. Because if you finish top 3, you get automatic qualification, but then you can select to drop down.
True. Yeah.
Play to your strengths, right? Don't go and try and qualify in a 50k where you're up against the best 50k runners. Play to your strengths and then drop down.
Well, yeah. Going to UTS this year, I wouldn't be competitive anyway, because I think I'd still be fatigued. So it was purely going to go to get a stone, but that still doesn't really help me. So, but I'm actually doing another race now a few weeks later after that. So, but that doesn't involve stones, unfortunately. Yeah, it's just timing for me. But yeah, that's a good bit of advice, and I'll definitely take that on board.
Real. Over to James to take us onto the Speed Project.
I was going to say, onto the Speed Project. So we've kind of alluded to it a few times, and obviously it's something we want to chat to you about, Holly. It's fairly recent history, as you said. It's still not fully recovered. And I know you've already spoken about it a lot, so hopefully we can find some interesting new little nuggets of information. But I suppose just for the listeners, because it's one of those races, like, it's really well known if you know about it, but if you've never heard of it, you might not have a clue what it is. It's quite a niche kind of scene, I suppose. Personally, I didn't hear about it until last year when James Poole, who does a lot of photography for us at a lot of the RunThrough Trail events, took part in it. And I remember chatting to him afterwards and thinking, like, this just sounds crazy.
It's pointless to James about it, because James is like, yes, fine.
Well, he just jogs with like an 80-litre backpack drinking a beer for days, I suppose. And it's kind of like, it seems like it suits him. I feel like he's made for that.
I mean, James is TSP, and everyone who does it is probably done it because of James.
Well, there you go.
I mean, James started, I think his first one was 2019, which was the first solo mission. So yeah, the TSB is very unique race. I don't think there's anything really like it. Firstly, it's invitation, it's the solo race I'm talking about. There's the relay as well. It started off as a relay, and it's basically an invitation race. So you're invited by Niels, who's the founder, and there's no rules apart from you start at said time and you need to get yourself to Las Vegas. And if you get stopped by the police, you have to just tell them that you're going for a run with your friends. You don't tell them that you're doing TSP because it's not a race.
Yeah, unsanctioned, no rules, no marked course.
No, unsanctioned. There's no checkpoints. There's no set route. You decide your route. There is the OG route, which is the route that Niels, then the founders developed when they did it themselves. And that is the longest route, but it's mainly road. And then what happened as time went on is people started, because there's no rules, people were like, hang on a minute. Because everyone was using like the road book that they'd made. And this was probably, I can't remember, I don't know, I think it's 10 years ago. Is that pre-Strava or... I don't know.
No, I mean, it definitely existed. It wouldn't have been as big.
No.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
So it wasn't so easy maybe to map your routes. I don't know. But so as time went on, people were like, surely there must be a quicker way to get there. So that's when people started making their own routes. And people still are making their own routes, because some people want to do it as a week's pilgrimage. Some people want to race it. Some people want to take on different areas. So they might do more of the mountain section. Some people want to do purely road. Some people want to do more of the dreaded power lines and the trail sections. So it's up to you what you want to do. My thought behind it was, well, who's got the record? I'm going to get his route and I'm going to do that route.
I mean, that is what we do, right? What's the fastest known route?
As a road runner, and also I'm going to try and avoid as much as the power lines as possible, because the power lines are sand. Imagine like beach sand, and like hundreds of kilometers of that, and you're following literally power lines. There's a power lines from LA, so it's from Santa Monica to Las Vegas to the sign, and you can follow the power lines. To give you an idea of how huge this is as well, it takes you about, if you do the route I did or the OG route, it takes about 90 miles to get out of LA from Santa Monica. So it's a long old trek, and it's just gradually uphill. So it's a crazy race, and you have to, you can either do it supported or unsupported. So James last year did it the first time unsupported. So that meant it took him a lot longer, but he took a backpack and a bivy bag and he slept in on the desert. Or other people also stay in motels. You can stay in motels along the way if you can find them. And you can have people following in an RV. Some people have RVs and off-roaders because of the off-road section. So you have someone with you the whole time. Some people have bikes. Some people have motorbikes. The list goes on. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah. Well, what's the, sorry, just to interrupt really quickly, but the RV thing reminds me of, a story I heard from another person. What's the established kind of fastest possible way to do it for the relay teams? Did I hear something that people are they're doing like 1 or 2 mile sections and just rotating?
They're doing towards the end. Bearing in mind, these couple of years, I think it was a couple of years ago, Nike and Adidas put teams in, and they'd spent a year preparing with their teams for this. This is how seriously they take it. Okay. There's no prize.
No, this is just
it's kudos, And they spent ages like developing the route. I think that's when they first found the different routes. And then what they do is they carve it up. So the traditional way is 10Ks. Most people do it in 10K sections. But what happens as they get closer, they tend to carve it up. So the guys that won it, the record went down this year, which was incredible. It was 28 hours.
For 340 miles or whatever they ended up doing.
It would have been, the quickest would have been 300 miles. That's the fastest that I did.
That's insane.
It's insane.
They run in 800s?
They run 200s at the end. Tagging. Wow. One's on a bike and they're just tagging on, off, on, off. It's insane. So they're like ex-Olympians and people doing it.
That's mental.
So there's all different ways of doing it. And actually second place came in 4 minutes behind. So it was amazing to watch.
Oh my God.
And so they were also a bit lucky with the weather, because freakishly this year we had a heat wave that basically started on the Monday, which is when we started. And then by the Friday, when the relays started, the temperature dropped quite a lot. It was still hot, but it wasn't anywhere near as hot. So that was a bit better. Whereas last year's TSP solo and relay was actually cold. They actually had snow in Death Valley, which was unprecedented. So the weather conditions are very variable, but most of the time it's going to be hot because you're running through the desert. So that's really what it's all about. So you do it how you want to do it. And also you are sort of dictated by finances because it's quite expensive to have RVs. And that's why I had an RV. I didn't have an off-roader as well because number one, I couldn't afford it. And number two, I'd have needed more people like to drive it. Someone needs to rest because they need to rest, because it's not like I was going to bed each night and having a bedtime. I was taking short sleeping periods at night or early hours of the morning and then getting up and going again. And that's the only time that they could sleep unless they napped in the day in between when they saw me.
Comes back to that point about big team effort, people being supportive of each other. You kind of need it in the trail world, especially when you start doing projects like this. I'm going to kind of touch on the sleep a little bit, but I'm also going to go to, well, if you're stopping and you're sleeping, you're also eating. And you've mentioned time and time again on this podcast that that's not a strength of yours. So what does that look like? Just give an insight into our listeners into your eating world whilst doing the project.
So there was a lot of people who were doing this. There was 41 people doing the Speed Project this year, which is the biggest number ever. And we had lots of calls before talking amongst ourselves about what we were doing and helping each other. And the amount of people that had these amazing spreadsheets with timings, what they were going to eat, how many carbohydrates. I didn't have anything like that because I know that it would just be screwed up within 40K. And that was not knowing about the heat, because obviously I know heat's going to affect everyone's eating and drinking. And particularly me, it was really bad, but everyone suffered. So I think I started at 4 a.m. I was pretty much on it for probably 50K eating. I knew I wasn't going to be taking on as many carbs that I would normally take on, as in when I'm racing, because I'll be honest, I'm not running at that higher intensity.
Yeah.
So I was happy to have a little bit of a drop in carbs because I knew that actually that it could actually come back to haunt me a bit. So I was trying to get, so in my last races, I've been trying to get up to about 70 grams of carbs, which is amazing for me. And it's good. That's good. You know, it's not 120 like my husband does, but that's never going to happen for me. 70 grams was like good.
70 grams for what length of race had you been able to maintain that?
In what, sorry?
For how many hours in a row had you been able to maintain 70 grams of carbs per hour before?
So Wendover Woods and 50 miles, I was doing that. And then I was doing it also, I did the Brecon to Cardiff. So that was, I can't remember how many hours that was. 6 hours, anything between 6 and 9 hours I was taking.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So with this one, I was taking on probably about 50 grams to 60 grams to start with. And then bang, it was like, okay, I think it was in the afternoon, later in the afternoon, that's when things started to be an issue. And definitely the graveyard shift, which was the last shift before I had my first sort of nap that night. Bearing in mind, I thought I can do 24 hours of running and then I'll probably have my first nap. But if I can push on further, I will. The aim was to sleep when I felt tired, but not overtired. I didn't want to be to the point, because again, I've never done this before. I've never done this before. I've taken like a couple of trail naps for 10 minutes, but that's it. I didn't know. I was really worried talking to lots of people that have done these races, like 200-mile races, that a lot of people say, oh, you'll put your head down and your legs will be jittery and you'll want to get up and you won't be able to sleep. So you lie there for like half an hour before you can sleep. So you've wasted that half an hour when you could be out there running or walking. So I was really worried about that. I did find that was one of my really strong points, that I would get into the RV, literally just put my head down and I was out like that. I can sleep. This is my strong point now. I found out I can sleep like that as long as I'm tired. I ended up sleeping at about 11:30 that night. So it was way before the 24 hours because I was being cooked from the inside out from the heat. Couldn't keep anything in. So every time I put something into my mouth, the gag reflex was coming out. So all I was doing at that point was water, and I take gels. I mean, I took billions of gels, which I know sounds hideous, but it was the only way I could actually get any sort of, at least I thought if I can at least get 1 gel in an hour, Morton 40 gram, if I can get one in an hour, that's 40 grams. That's the minimum I'm going to deal with. And if I can just do that, I'll keep on doing that. So I did. So the Morton I can take in I take it in like lumps in my mouth. I don't let it go into my mouth, the taste of it, because it's the taste fatigue as well. I take water and I swallow it in a lump. And so I just take that down and hopefully it won't come out again and it stays in and then I'm done. That'll do. And then the rest of the time, electrolytes do not work for me. They make me worse. They make me really sick. I don't know whether I'm just not a salty sweater or I'm getting enough. I eat a lot of crisps and stuff in between. But I think that I've spoken to quite a few people about this, and all the time, like my crew were like, you've got to have more electrolytes. And I was like, I really don't. I don't want any more electrolytes. It's really making my stomach very bad. So I didn't do that. And then, so my first thing was the first sleep I took, which I kept on calling it a reset, is I know that if I have any sort of naps at home, not that I really do, but when I do, like, if you fall asleep on the sofa for a bit and you wake up, I'm always ravenous when I wake up, even if I've slept for 20 minutes. It's like a weird thing. So all I kept saying to the boys was like, if I just have a little sleep, I reckon I'll be able to eat afterwards. And that's what was sort of happening. So that first night, I went to sleep and we said, let's do, I think it was like 3.5 hours. So I did 3.5, 3 hours 45, woke up, and then I was able to eat something. So I got in like a bowl of cereal, a banana, a cup of tea, and then we set off again. So you're starting sort of again in the middle of the night and then trucking on and then I could get out of the van. This was the amazing thing. I'd get out of the van and I could run out of the van, which is like, I didn't know if I'd be able to do that.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it?
Like,
I mean,
night,
yeah. Well, that was going to be like, that's my question. So you've had your sleep, you've got the food in, it's cooler. So all those things make sense that your body's maybe feeling.
It's not like a sleep cycle. You've had 5-6 hours.
Well, I thought you were going to say something stupid like I lay down for 5 minutes and go up and run another 24 hours. So 3.5 hours sounds fairly luxury. But at least you've got the food in and it's a bit cooler because this was the first night. Yeah. Okay, so that wasn't something that you could.
No, it got less hours. I did less hours. That was my longest sleep. And
was that planned, or was that just you felt like you needed it due to the heat and the echo of the first day?
My crew, we had no plan. We always knew that the sleeps were probably going to be anything between, like sleep cycles, they say it's like 90. Again, I'd spoken to Damien as well. Damien's a good mate of mine. He was like 90 minutes to 4 hours, really, if you're wanting to be sort of competitive. I mean, other than having 6 hours sleep, that's fine. Of
course.
So I'll be honest, that first night, I just felt like shit. And things were coming. We had to do a really long drag up this hill to get to the RV. We had to go through a sewer pipe. We had to get onto a rail line. I mean, it was, to be honest, some of the course was it's not like you're not going to go for a holiday. It was
so you're not selling it.
Well, also, I mean, you kind of picked it because there isn't a course. So
that's my goal.
Yeah.
Dark. It was on the old Route 66 bit, and it's actually where the PCT joined the course on the road.
Okay.
We had dogs, a lot of loose dogs coming at us. You have massive juggernauts. I can't express to you what it's like. It's like vast.
Yeah.
Lorries going past you, trains on one side, and then we had to get onto a train track for a bit, which was terrifying to get, because we could see the RV at the gas station. They're all at gas stations. We put on 3 words, because I'd had to work out where they were going to be. Bearing in mind, this was my thing. I'd worked this all out with never being on the course. I'd never been to that part of America. I'd only done it through Google Street View. I was like, I think this is the best place to meet. I think this is approximately 12 miles or 8 miles or whatever. So all the time I was like, this could be completely wrong and I'm fucked. So then we got to the van, and that's when we said, actually, yeah, we just need a bit of a reset, and I think I need a bit longer. And then it was after that, and then the heat. So every time I got out of the van, I would try and get as many miles in the dark while it was cooler. But it wasn't as cool. Every year, people are wearing like down jackets at night because it gets really cool. It didn't. I think we had a long sleeve on once or twice, but the rest of the time we were in T-shirts or vests. It's that hot.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many factors to it. Like, obviously, the distance is the first thing that grabs your attention, and the length of time. Those two things are the most kind of like obvious things that are massively challenging. Then the weather, then the terrain, then the lack of certainty of like the crew. You've not got nice laid out aid stations. It's not UTMB. You don't know exactly what times you're going to be going through in different splits.
Yeah.
So that brings me on to the question of like, how do you come up with a pacing strategy, and how do you decide, oh yeah, this is my 340 mile pace, so I'm just going to set off at this? Because I would imagine your last mile was a bit slower than your first mile.
No, my last...
Oh, no.
No. The last couple of miles definitely was slow, but before that, because that's another story. But in terms of was there a pace of strategy? No.
Yeah, you sort of couldn't really have one, could you? Like, what did you do? You just went out. Yeah, you went out like easy jog and just thought, I'll just do this.
James messaged me because he was doing the secret course, which was just 700 kilometers. James had messaged me saying, "Oh, are you having fun?" And I was like, "Absolutely no. Like, this is your fault." And then he said, "Well, you did go off quite hard." And I was like, "Oh, did I? I had no idea." So maybe I went off a bit too fast, but I didn't think I did. I think I was fully in my zone. You know, I felt comfortable. It wasn't fast. I mean, I was probably at most running 5-minute Ks at most. This was downtown LA, so I was on road. But then after that, I knew that as the heat got worse, and the other thing on day 2, I got a very bad heat rash all on my feet and all up my legs. So it was very itchy. I haven't had that since I was a kid. It was red and inflamed, and just so I was having to deal with that. I was getting so hot, like my water in my bottles were boiling. That's how hot it was. Mm. My bottles tasted of plastic because they were so gross. I've had to throw them away. They're so bad. Like I put Coke in them and they tasted of like plastic and Coke and bleach and stuff. I can't tell you how hot.
It sounds awful.
No. And there was no shade. So out in the desert. So I had an umbrella at one point to keep the shade off me. So I was trying to walk with an umbrella. Ice bandana, ice in my backpack. I had the hat with the flaps. And yeah, that it was all I could do. And I would take an ice lolly out with me every time I got to the van, so that would keep me a bit cool. But every time I got into the van, I'd have the air conditioning on. I would have a blanket that they'd put in the freezer around me. It was like that sort of level of heat. And with that, you just do what you can running. I actually only found out the other day that Gary had said that we did the section to Baker, which was one of the hottest parts of the days. That's when Gary started having really bad nosebleeds, and I had nosebleeds later on the next day, like horrendous nosebleeds, like nosebleeds that I've never had before, like coming out of my mouth, just spraying out of me.
And that's related to the heat. That's like a vasodilation thing.
Yeah, heat and sand, they're saying. They think dusty. But a lot of the other people had them as well. And we got to Baker, and that's got the world's highest thermometer. And there's a reason for that, isn't there? There's going to be somewhere there, because it was roasting. And yeah, it was just like, and apparently at that place, people in RVs, you can't park your RV for long there because the air conditioning systems blow up.
Wow.
Cheapest.
So it was like, we need to be as good as we can in the day. So we had to do short sections, go in the van, cool down a bit, go again. And then I was really conscious that the biggest section of the whole race, which is it's about 20 miles, where there's nowhere anyone can get to. It's called the main power lane section, where you go to the highest part of the course, which is about a mile above sea level. And there's no cell reception, and you're basically on your own unless you have a 4-wheel drive following you, which I didn't have. And I was conscious that I had to time that section in the middle of the night or very early in the morning, because if I did it in the day, I'd probably get heat exhaustion or worse. So I had to really, really push on day 3. I probably did the most miles on day 3 off. So I'd had 3 hours 40 or something sleep. Then the next night I had 3 hours. So at that point I'd had 6.5 hours sleep since Monday. And so I had to do that section. I ended up doing it early hours of the morning, but it meant I had to push on a lot the day before to get to that point.
So it's interesting because it's kind of the polar opposite of what you'd expect from a lot of the rest of your career, where you do have everything mapped out. You've got pacing strategies. You go back to your roads career, everything is planned meticulously. And this is more, you're thinking on the fly. But I actually think this is where maybe your elite athletics helps you, because I believe elite athletes are better than they think at readjusting within a race setting. So when things don't go right, they can rethink strategy. They can respond to things. They respond to moves. If your fueling wasn't going right in a marathon, you can kind of think of what to do. Whereas I see, and I coach a lot of people online, and this is no disrespect to them, it's just the way it is. Like, they tend to panic if things go off plan. Whereas what you're saying here is, I actually didn't really have a plan, but we were creating our plan on the move. and we were very effective at doing that as a team. And our strategy was built almost as I was going through this. And I would say that is probably a skill in itself, and that's probably where you come to the fore, I imagine.
I think it's being confident, isn't it, in being okay with that. And I think that thing, if I'd have had a plan and written it out, and I think that's what a lot of people did, and then you weren't going to that plan, like you said, they're going to panic and think, oh my God, because I didn't have a plan. Because I didn't know what I was doing. It was no man's land. And for most of the people doing it, it's the same. There was a few people that had done like Moab 240 and stuff like that. And Abraham, the guy behind me, had. And his plans went out the window as well. And he was very experienced at this stuff. So I think, you just had to think on the run. But I would say this race, more than any race I've done, challenged me physically, obviously, but mentally more than anything. Because it was the mental side of it. All I kept thinking was, how the hell am I going to do this physically? How am I going to get to Las Vegas? It is such a long way. And I hadn't really taken that on board. I was slightly flippant about it. I think I was a bit like, yeah, I can run. I'm a runner. It's fine. I'll get through that. And I was worrying about the logistics more, whereas actually the logistics sort of took care of themselves, like you said. You just had to do, and actually the course worked out fine. I'd mapped it properly. But what I had to do was deal with my brain, my internal thoughts constantly. I was constantly doing battle with it because my brain was just like for a lot of people, and it's how you deal with that, isn't it? Like, stop, just go to sleep. This is just a nightmare. And that's one of my things I think that I am good at, is that I can't let myself stop because I'm in it. I'm not one of these people that will DNF. I think I DNF'd 10,000 meters at Alexandra Stadium many years ago, and it killed me and that was all because of my brain. I went off far too fast. I couldn't deal with it. It was like I was gladiatorial in the stadium. Everyone was looking at me, and I stopped and I walked off, and I was in a panic, and I thought, I'm never doing this again. And whereas all these other races, and I'll say it goes back to UTMB.
I was just going to say.
So awful in UTMB. I was covered in my own shit. I was like crawling up from Trion, but I did it. And it's like, wow, if I can do that and nothing, like I didn't die, nothing fell off. If something, I say to my clients, like, just think about, I always think, so yesterday I was doing coaching calls. That just seems like not that long ago. And 24 hours has passed, okay? And in 24 hours time, like tomorrow, we'll all be doing our things tomorrow, and we'll forgotten about what we're doing now. And as much as you're so absorbed in the moment of how awful it is and how awful you feel and how you can't get your brain thinking, how am I going to spend another 24 hours doing this? It goes so quickly, and you'll never forgive you. I will never forgive myself if I give up now, because I know in 24 hours time or 48 hours time, I'll really be pissed off with myself. And the thought of not finishing and feeling like that is way worse than in that moment.
And the mind will give up before the body as well, which is what I'm telling all my marathon runners before next weekend, before London and Manchester, is the mind will give up first, always, unless your body is broken, and then you'll know to step up. And there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I think what you're describing is exactly what I was going to go on to. Is it is a mindset test, like it is, and I think, I'll be honest, I'm going to call the guys out here. I think that's why we see women close the gap the longer we go, because I think men's egos get in the way. I think that the gladiatorial phrase that you use, there's a big ego thing. There's testosterone that has been laid out early. They go off too fast. And then they pay the price for it. And that's when we see the women, the diesel engines, as you said. But I think it's more than that. I think it's psychological.
Yeah,
keep going.
It's so easy to give in. And I think once you start DNFing and giving in, that's another thing. Is I think when you start DNFing, you see a lot of people, don't you? Or some people who start DNFing, and then it's just really easy to do it again because you've sort of given yourself that neural pathway. Whereas if you've actually done something, and I keep saying it a lot to people now, it's like, and it doesn't really make sense, but it does to me. It's like, to do hard things, you have to do hard things before. So you have to do something that's really hard, and then it's up to you whether you want to do something harder, but you know you've done that hard thing and you can do this again, unless, like Lewis said, you break something falls off, or someone dies next to you or with you and you've got to deal with that. That's different. But actually, you are capable of, you can get to the end and you will do it. You just got to believe you're going to do it, and just in that moment, believe that in so many hours' time it will be over and you'll be looking back on it like we are now, and it wasn't that bad.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that, this like creating a neural pathway that's going to make it easier to DNF in the future. The exact same thought that I had, because I've had experiences with other things throughout life. I'm sure everyone has, where, sometimes you've got a bad habit, you want to change that habit. It's quite difficult to get out of it. But as soon as you get into a new rhythm, it's almost easy to stay locked into that. And the scary thing is, if you were to dip back into the old habit once, does that kind of throw a spanner in the works, ruin the whole thing, and then you're off the rails? And it sounds like you kind of had that from day one, since this 10K on the track experience, or whenever it was that you decided, I'm never going to DNF because it's hard. I'm always going to finish. And you did that at UTMB, and you've done that with the Speed Project here. But it's that same kind of fear of, I don't want to be a person who has the option mentally to give up if I don't need to. And I don't even want that to be like a consideration in my mind, because you must have like hours of having those thoughts, right? You haven't, you can't not have them. There must have been so many moments where you're like, just stop, I'm done.
It wasn't like, see, now I'm looking back and thinking, 100 miles, 100 miles, it's not that bad. I know that when I'm doing 100 miles again now, it's different because I'll be racing 100 miles, but it's
different
still
pace, yeah,
different. But this was like, I remember thinking, oh, I'm halfway, like ding ding. I've just got like, no, that's insane. How am I going to do it? I feel appalling now. How am I going to do it? But all I kept saying was like, I've literally got no choice. I've got no choice. I've got to keep doing it. I've brought all these people here to help me. And every time I'd get into the RV, I'd had this road book. In fact, where is it? I've got it here. I made this, and this is how bad I am. I even stuck together sellotape because I printed it so badly. So I've got this road book. This is like what 3 words, and the boys have written all on it as well. And it was like every time I'd come in, and I'd look to Jake, and I'd say, oh, "How far's the next section?" And he'd be like, "Holly, it's pretty much the same as the last one."
Here again,
like 7 miles, 9 miles, and then there were some sections where I'd be like, and he'd say something like, "Okay, the next one is 14 miles," and I'd be like, "Okay, well, I've got to do it. I've got to do it." And that's it. And it just every time I'd come in, next one, 7 miles, 7 miles. So
there's a great book on this, Holly. I think it's called Brain Training for Runners. I can't remember exactly who wrote it, but it talks about the more you. Yes, it is. Yeah. And it talks about it. You train your brain, you go deep on several occasions, and the same principles stay true no matter what the new challenge is. But you've taught the brain that you can survive and you can live and you can come through it. And then the more you do that, it's not necessarily about always pushing hard, because I think people do that and overdo that in the training. I need to work hard to get the results. It's different. It's like, I got myself out of a hole and I know I can do that again. And then the brain figures it out. And this is a great story of how you did that, and you chunked it down into smaller sections to get to the eventual outcome of many, many miles. I just thinking to my point where you probably got into your head and thought, just a UTMB to go. And I'm thinking, like, that is mental.
I did set to it, and I said it's only 100 miles to go. We're at 100 miles to go. When does that ever sound normal?
It doesn't. We literally watched that King of Moab documentary last week.
Before the race.
Yeah. We watched it at Lewis's house the other day. Oh man, it's brutal. With that, when he's talking about just being on like a treadmill doing like 80-minute mile and barely moving it. Oh, it's been 4 miles forever. It's been 4 miles forever. But even in that story, it was pretty cool. His legs came back and he had something at the end and was actually able to kind of come out of a complete hole of, this is impossible. I'm completely broken. I'm done. Back to like, oh, I'm moving all right. Like, oh, I'm jogging. Oh, I'm in first.
Yeah, I think it's
what was that? Yeah, what was that for you? Like at the end, what was that?
I say that to the clients and just friends, people before the CSP who'd not done stuff like this. I said, do you remember that? And you get this in marathons, but it's slightly different. I think in marathons, it gets harder than you finish. Whereas with, you hope, rather than with an ultra, you're going to get lows, like horrible lows, but you're going to come out of that, unless, like you say, you've broken something. You're going to come out of it, and then you're going to get a bit of a high, and you're going to feel better. But then I will tell you, you're going to get another low, and you're going to have to be able to deal with that and be okay with that. But you have to remember that there is a good thing coming. And I think that's where some like road runners who go and do their first ultras, they get a low, and then they're like, that's it, I'm finished. Because they're not accepting that there's going to be a high, or they're not prepared to wait for that high or believe it's going to happen. And with this is what happened with me. Although I'll be honest, it was just a very long
low.
it was just hard the whole way. It was just, it was hard the whole time. And I said to Pete, my husband, when it was just the two of us, which it was the two of us a lot. He paced me for 150 miles.
Wow.
It was amazing. Way more than I expected him to, or he expected to. And he was amazing. He just kept me, he was brilliant. And I would turn to him when we'd come out of the van and I would just say, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to do it. And he'd be like, well, we'll just take a mile at a time and we'll see how we are. But I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to have to do it. I know I've got to do it, but I don't know how I'm going to do it. And it's scaring the shit out of me. At the time, the hours click on, and then you start to say, yeah, I'm a marathon. I'm 100 miles from Las Vegas. And then before you know it, you do the power line section, the bit you've been dreading the most, which was actually probably the most eventful and most exciting and most beautiful part. You end up catching first place, which is actually another thing on your mind, which you never really want to happen, because it's like, oh shit.
Now I've got to breathe.
I think about what I'm doing. But I'm 40 miles deep, And that's a different story. But and then I get to the road section where I knew that I was going to basically be running the whole thing on my own. I planned that because it's a straight road and it's a straight road to Vegas. And I got to that bit, and all the time in my mind beforehand is like, brilliant. I'll put some faster shoes on, put some earphones in, and let's see if we can crack on. How was I thinking? I did. I probably cracked out 5K under 5-minute Ks, which was fast in consideration.
That's pretty impressive. Yeah.
And then suddenly I just ran into a massive bear, as in not in figuratively. And and then just everything. I don't know what it was. It's almost like a mental thing. I saw Las Vegas and everything just started. Every footstep I took on the road, because it was all road, downhill. The downhill didn't help me at all. It actually made it worse. I felt every shock go through my foot into my legs. I genuinely thought that when I finished, I would have broken legs, because I could feel, it felt like my bones were splintering into tiny pieces. I'd got nerve damage on the bottom of my feet at that point. So my feet were numb. So they were like jelly feet. And then I was getting shooting pains up into my legs. And all I could think was like, this is horrible. This was the bit I wanted to run well. It's a really horrible road. I'm getting massive lorries going past me, like dangerously close. I'm miles and miles from Vegas. It's absolutely boiling. My stomach's now giving me issues, and I just want this over with. And that was actually quite sad, because I actually was looking forward to that. And in fact, that bit was probably one of the worst bits of the whole thing. And it went on and on and on and on. It was like 6 hours or something of this road. And I was chasing down Parley, thinking in my mind, maybe I could catch her, which I wasn't. And then obviously I got the news that she'd got to the finish. And I'll be honest, I was really deflated at that point. I felt like, okay, well, because I am competitive and I wanted to be competitive. And I loved that I'd caught Parley. She was like 12 miles ahead of me at one point, like 4 hours or something. But that was all I could give at that time.
Yeah.
And that's all I did give. And then I got to the finish and I was like, so pleased it was over. But I was also I was pretty sad, that usual feeling like it was over and it was time to finish. And Parley was sitting at the finish line for me, bless her, in her deck chair. And that was a brilliant moment, because it was all about the women this year. And, I think we did a really good job. And it was a great story. But that last bit was not what I wanted it to be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But I mean, that sums up kind of the chat as a whole in a lot of ways, because there's every bit of what you've talked about from your past and your personality and your running career and kind of your mentality, the way you think about stuff. You're a hyper-competitive person who obviously has had like incredible performances, who you were there to win, like you wanted to run well.
Yes.
Who you are, that's what you've done. That's, you don't compete on a world-class level without having that drive. You're not going to give up. You're going to finish. And no matter what happens, you're going to kind of fight through. And you had this idea in your head of, it's similar, like we've all had moments like that when we've planned out longer races, especially like ultra distance trail races. You're thinking about the course, thinking about how you're going to feel. Maybe you're doing a bit of visualization. Maybe you're speaking to a coach, whatever you do. But there'll be sections where you think you know how you're going to feel in those sections, and it almost never happens. And again, it's another one of those lessons of like the unpredictability, and what kind of makes it so special is, on the one hand, it's sad that wasn't what you wanted it to be, but on the other hand, that is what it is, and that's why you were there. That's kind of the whole point. Like that in itself sums up the experience. And I mean, what was the first emotion when you crossed the finish line? Was it relief that it was over? Was it sadness that you hadn't performed how you wanted to? Was it elation that you didn't have to do another step? Were you scared about your legs? Like, what was it?
Fuck me, that hurt. I think that's what I said in the YouTube thing. But I was glad it was over because I was in so much pain, genuinely. I was sad earlier that I hadn't, because I was happy that I was all the time. I was going between third and fourth, actually. So for me, I was like thinking about second. I can get second. Parley's an amazing athlete. To come second to her, that's fine. I can deal with that, obviously. But then when I caught her, that's when it was like, and then I let it get into my head that what an amazing story would this be if I could win this? Perhaps I could do it. And I'm going to try as much as I can without it, because you can only try as hard as you can 240 miles in. It's not like, come on, Holly, let's rally. It's like, everything I'm giving, I can't give you any more. So that's why when I finish, like I've always said to another podcast, it's like, if someone overtakes me in a race and I've been training as hard as I can, or I've been running as hard as I can, then I am applauding them, because if a woman goes past me, then she's better than me, and then I'm happy, and I'll go away and work out how to be faster or something. And that's the way I am. So I was happy with that, but I guess it gave me that little bit of a thing like, wow, this could be an amazing story if I went past her. But that didn't happen. So I'd got over that, I think, coming into it. I knew that she'd already finished. I think she was at about an hour and 45 minutes ahead of me. That's fine. But yeah, so finishing, I was disappointed that the sign was so tiny. I was sort of, what is it? And you've got all these queues of people all day, all night, people queue to have their photograph taken in front of the Welcome to Las Vegas sign. And there was all these queues of people, and this guy just started shouting at me, "Excuse me, love, like we're trying to get our photo taken." I have any idea that I've just ran from
oh my God.
At that point, I think just getting a bit, I was like, no, don't cause a scene. So yeah, I think it was just massive relief that I'd done it. And yeah, I mean, it was after that it all started to, sink in or not sink in as to what had actually happened, and actually how hard it was, and how, you do feel like you leave a little bit of yourself out there, physically and mentally. I left a lot of myself out there physically, actually. And that's how after that, that was probably one of the hardest bits, actually, dealing with it after. But yeah, the first thing was just relief. It was finished, if I'm honest, because it was so pain. My legs were in so much pain.
Wow. Yeah, it's insane. I mean, that guy shouting at the sign, the lack of context of what has just happened. I mean, it's like
not his
a million times the version of someone coming in to finish at the Moot Hall after a Bob Graham round and the pensioners wandering through the market. But yeah, I mean, it's insane. Obviously, it's unbelievably inspirational, and like your entire career is super impressive, obviously. But this is just
inspirational, though, because I don't think it's a sort of healthy thing to really be. I don't so much mean that other people should go and do it. Yeah.
I mean the fighting through that level of difficulty, those mental struggles, those lows over such a long period of time. It is just inspirational. It really is. That could be someone coming back from war, or it could be like, not to compare those sorts of things, but what are different difficult situations.
War.
I'm sure. You'd probably ask like a soldier who served multiple tours, they'd probably rather do that than complete this race. It's all relative, but it's inspirational in that sense of what people can put themselves through and still complete it, finish. And to obviously like also run a great time and only be an hour and a half behind first or whatever, which is a long time, but in the grand scheme of that race, it's nothing.
Not very long.
No, it's a third of a sleep one night. It's unbelievable. Yeah, it's could have had an hour's less kit. But yeah,
disaster. But yeah, it is. I do think that my only concern is, I guess, myself, is that like if I do things like this, like what am I potentially going to make myself do next? And I don't really want to. I don't know if I want to make myself do that. Do anything harder for a start.
It's interesting that you even put it like that. What am I going to make myself do? I'm concerned about what I might choose to do. And I know what you mean, but it is a funny way of putting it. But yeah, I mean, we're excited to see what you do next.
We're making a documentary about this, which will be fun, I think, because I don't really remember what I said or what I did.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
I don't remember, but it's been filmed, so it'll be interesting to see what has been said. But I think it does worry me a bit that is what, that doing these sort of things makes me feel alive, but sort of like why I'm doing it and why why I'd want to do stuff like this. Like at that level, I understand why people so James does it, and James does it as a week's thing. I mean, I still don't understand why he wants to do 700 kilometers unaided. That's really tough, especially this year. It was so tough because it was so hot. And that's sort of different. But I think it's just pushing yourself to try and do it as fast as you can is different.
Like, yeah, it's each to their own. Like, we had loads of members of staff this last weekend who went around Paris Marathon. Some of them are trying to run a PB and they've done a load of training for it. I know Lewis is going to have a ton of athletes running at Manchester, running at London in a couple of weeks. We've all got race goals coming up, and it might be that you want to run a PB, or it might be like for some other members of the team, just want to complete their first marathon. And to them, that is the biggest, craziest thing you could possibly even conceive of doing. And it's as big of a challenge for them as this is for you. Like, it's just that relative thing. And really, I think that the inspirational part, the most interesting part of it is how after achieving something, we always look for something more. I think it's like a Nietzsche quote. It's like, it's what restless striving, like the restless striving of people is kind of what makes us people in a way. Like, you want to take on a challenge, and it's not going to be a challenge if you know you can do it and you've already completed it, and it's not in any way, like, there's no unknowns related to it. So there's always going to be that level of picking the next goal. It's going to be something scary. It might be scary because you're going to try and run OCC really quick, and that's a totally different type of scary. Or it might be scary because you're going to go do the Appalachian Trail or whatever in between. But that's the beauty of the sport, is you can do a 3K uphill only fell race, or you can do Cocodona 250, or you can whatever. It's exciting, it's cool, but it is also a little bit scary because those moments are really dark. And it's interesting how this was obviously a little. How long since you finished?
What day is it? Is it Wednesday?
Wednesday.
It's 3 weeks tomorrow.
Okay, so it's 3 weeks post, and you're almost talking the same way that I would the day after, like finishing a marathon, where I'm a little bit like, oh, I don't really know what I'm going to do next, but it'll be something, but I don't know how I feel. You're almost still like fatigued from it mentally.
Interesting, actually. I mean, UTMB, I reckon that scarred me for quite a long time. I mean, not enough years enough for me to want to go back and do it. I wanted to go back and do it. It was either OCC or UTMB last year, and I didn't get in. So it's taken me that long to pluck up the courage to go back to do that. Whereas with this, actually, I mean, already I'm planning something potentially hard. And I think it's really because of the experiences that I had on this one. It was obviously horrendously tough, but I also came away with some amazing feelings and experiences. The feelings that I had about the crew that I was with became quite intense, and the feeling that I had about being in that country, in those places, which were like very strange places I've never been to before, like properly way out there places. I don't understand why anyone would live in those places. So I think it was almost different, sort of life-changing in that respect. And also because it's like you're totally doing it yourself. With UTMB, it's like all organised and you've got checkpoints and there's that sort of safety aspect. Whereas this, it's actually highly unsafe a lot of the time. And that's quite appealing.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. Like it's I mean, that's part of what makes it so cool and why I think it grabs people's attention. It's not just the distance and the difficulty and the location. It's the fact that it seems pretty sketchy. Like it's not really organised. It's I mean, it's cool. It's cool. Well, anyway, Holly, it's been amazing hearing about your story. We could talk about this for another 2 hours.
Great.
But yeah, really appreciate you coming on, and kind of excited now to see what this next challenge that you're alluding to is. I'm sure it'll be something mental. But yeah, congratulations, and been an absolute pleasure. Great to talk to you, and it's definitely, like I say, it is inspiring. It's inspiring to me because just puts it all into context. That long run that you've got to do at the weekend really isn't that big of a deal when it's 3 hours after we're talking about 340 miles of running.
No, that's what I wanted to add to wrap things up from my perspective is it's not that you're trying to inspire people to go and do the same, Holly, and I think it's really important to get that message across. That nobody here expects that, but there's a lot of people who'll take different inspiration from this story in different ways, and I think that's important because I'm sat here, I'm inspired, but there's no way in hell I'm inspired to go and do what you've done. Like, it's not even a thought that crosses my mind, but there's part of me sat here as a coach thinking, I want to figure this out. You know, I'm inspired to go away and think about this a little bit more. So you can take inspiration in different ways, but I hope people have sat here. Well, I know people have sat here, listened to this and gone, God, that's an amazing challenge. I don't want to do that. But something that Holly said resonated with me there, and I can take that away, and that's going to really help my performance. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. It's been a great conversation.
No, thank you for having me on. It's been good to talk about some different things about the Speed Project and around that as to the other podcasts I've done. So thank you for asking such interesting questions.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, there we go, Lewis. I guess that's a pat on the back for us. We've done a good job, and well done to Holly for an incredible achievement. Hopefully you guys have all really enjoyed the podcast and maybe learned something, been inspired to go and take on some sort of challenge, whatever that means to you. We'll be back as usual in the next couple of weeks with a new episode, and we'll see you all very soon.